Item B, and let's move on to item C, wild horse update.
Mr. Chairman, Deputy Director Rich Haskins, for the record, in your packet, there's an update prepared by our Habitat Division. If you have any questions, I might be able to answer. If not, well, I'll find out the answer for you.
Questions on the wild horse?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, Mr. Vogler.
Mr. Haskins, I almost fainted when I read that. What happened to my wild horse gather? What happened to the antelope? Is it because it's later in the year that it just wasn't in this report? Because supposedly there is one scheduled in the antelope area. It's supposed to be this winter and sometime in December, I believe. And
I don't see it either. I'll follow up.
yeah,
This,
I know.
Steve Siegel prepared this. Most of this information comes right off a BLM website, so we'll check into that. So it was for the antelope range.
Antelope Valley, and I assume it would go into Ms. Pickens's area. If you would like, Chairman Rain, I could go ahead and tell you what's going on in my neighborhood and give you an update on my new neighbor's
Sure.
expanding operation.
I think that would be of interest to the commission.
My understanding is her website is about 4 miles ahead of what is actually going on because she's trying to raise funds. So if you want to have her version, it is on her website, Madeline Pickens's, and it escapes me the exact how to get into it, but I'm sure if you type in Madeline Pickens and wild horses, you can get it. She has an option to buy Sorensen's Ranch, providing the BLM AUM's transfer. She has also put an option to buy Warm Creek or Warm Springs Ranch, which is going to give her an area of several 100,000 acres. It is a huge, huge wintering area for deer. There is anecdotal, albeit sheep sightings out there. Spruce Mountain, 2 or 3 people have seen them up there, and also at the Victoria Mine further on over. Antelope Range, there's some trophy deer out there. It's just some real neat country. According to the people at the BLM, unless she can get a special protocol or some, she's going to have Taylor Grazing Act changes. It's not going to be an easy thing for her to do. So I'm sure there's going to be several opportunities for public comment. The Taylor Grazing Act's going to have to be changed. She's going to have to do a whole bunch of things because as of right now, the estimate at the BLM, she might be able to run 400 head of horses on a year-round basis. She's claiming that she's going to take care of all 30,000 of them. And 2,000 of them immediately, which is a noble cause, no question about it. I assume that those horses would be under the same regulation as my sheep or my cows would be or anybody else's as far as damage to the range. There are 2,000 horses in that area already. So as we all know, she couldn't even be able to keep up with the colt crop that's being hatched right there, let alone bringing in horses from somebody else. She would be subject under some sort of branding situation, laws, because they would have to be able to identify the horses that are already there from the horses that she'd be in. I mean, there's just a whole bunch of things that she's going to have to jump through. The good news is if she did all of these things, any rancher in the area could just say, hey, I just want to be treated like Madeline. I mean, if you can expedite these things, then so should I. I mean, they're just, I think there's a ways to go, and I think there's some legitimate ways to have some influence over this. She's going to have to address me, Forrest Arthur, Kay Lear, Ken Jones, and other people who have permits in those same areas. It's in a herd management area. You can't fence it. So do not despair, no matter which side of this issue you may be on. It is not going to happen in an instant. I do not believe, and if it does, then we should all get our pitchforks and go into the streets because it ain't fair. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? How are they going to change the Taylor Grazing Act? That'll be an act of Congress, correct?
Oh, boy, I would assume. It was passed in 1934. You would have to have senators from all the western states, and of course, all the western states have had a gut full of the horse deal anyhow, So, yeah, you have got it. That's a big obstacle to come over. You're going to have to change the Wild Horse and Burro Act. I mean, there are some serious things, and
Yeah.
of course, T's got one of them big checkbooks, so maybe he can get her done. I don't know.
Wow.
Be interesting. Keep in touch.
Wild horse update. Anybody else have wild horse update? Any wild horse people moving into your yard? Wild horses, lots on wild horse update, go ahead.
I just want to reiterate, on horses and burros, the state water engineer's decision considers them wildlife, and when you develop any allotment, you must put water for horses and burros. And I'd like to see that on the agenda, where we write a letter to the water master to the state of Nevada, as far as whether they're wildlife or not. They're not, I don't think they're wildlife, but make that agenda item for our next meeting.
Okay, go ahead.
According to the law, after talking to Mr. Lind about this very subject, as it is now written, even when they have a wild horse gather, those horses are brand inspected. Technically, the state of Nevada owns all unbranded animals, whether it be a cow or a horse. The brand department, Department of Agriculture, makes the final decision of who the animal belongs to and who it will be given to. Just like the horses they found over at Wendover were either the offsprings or the direct descendants of horses that were dumped out. They were strictly feral. Fine line between a feral horse and a wild horse. So, for the state engineer to make that kind of a ruling is really walking out into some country that I think we could protest. I think we should. If you remember a few years ago, Wyoming sued the Bureau of Land Management for horse gathers. All the money for almost 3 years went to get all of the Wyoming horses down to HMLs, or whatever they call them, or allowable use levels, or numbers and noses. And they've had to keep them at that, and their feet were put to the fire. I'm not so sure we couldn't pursue something with the Department of Agriculture. And there is, believe it or not, there's a bunch of people in the BLM that I'm sure that would be more than happy if we did this, because they're sick of them too in a lot of respects. I mean, it's just not working, and it hasn't worked, and this might be an avenue to get their numbers limited to what the range will support and have things left over for livestock and wildlife, i.e. multiple use, i.e. Taylor grazing. So, yes, I think we should have lots of conversations about this. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Lent, you had something further?
No, I just had a paragraph I wrote on this, and if I just might read it. Write a letter to the Division of Water Resources, explain that the free-roaming wild horse and burros are a special status species that comes under this jurisdiction of the Department of Ag by Nevada brand law, only after captured and reinforced by 43 CFR 4750.2. When the wild horse is captured and under the control of BLM, it falls into the domestic livestock category. It then is under the jurisdiction of Nevada brand law. The holding facilities for the horses which are using water for them is declared livestock beneficial use, not wildlife. When the wild horse is captured, it has lost some of that special status. It is no longer free roaming. When the adoption occurs, the title to the animal transfers to the private person from the U.S. government. A Nevada state brand inspection is necessary to transport the animal and change title to the adopter in part. The wild horse has then lost most, if not all, of its special status. When a horse is in its HMA, it is neither wildlife nor livestock by both the BLM's definition of wildlife or domestic livestock. I don't know if that's true, but that's what we should look at.
Okay. Anything else on this subject? Mr. Shrum?
Mr. Chairman, we're all aware that, we're all aware that over the past couple years or longer, Southern Nevada Water Authority has moved into the area along the border between Nevada and Utah and purchased several ranches, I guess purchased them complete. I don't, and they say they've admitted it's a losing proposition. They just simply went and purchased them. I don't know if they're operating ranches, but I'm reasonably sure that there's an adequate amount of water on those ranches, and I wonder if there's any way we could make a deal or move some of these wild horses that are supposedly free-ranging or starving or whatever, and moving on to these vacant ranches, rather than lose the grass and water that's there, that's being just wasted. What would be the ramifications if we could make a deal or say, here, can you give us a hand with this problem?
Let's go with Mr. Stockton, and do you have something on that?
No, not really, but I think all the problems that apply to Mrs. Pickens' ranch would apply to doing that as well. Well, Southern Nevada Water Authority's what do you call it?
They have exempt license plates, they're public.
They're what?
utility. They're talking exempt license plates,
Yeah, they're,
they're not paying property taxes. How semi-quasi, what?
I don't know, but those are federal horses, and you got the problem of putting them on state land or private land and all that kind of stuff. It's all tied up in the Wild Horse and Burro Act, so I guess I don't have a good answer for you, but I think it would be very complicated to do that.
Mr. Vogler?
Mr. Shrum, that's my other next door neighbor. Mrs. Pickens is on this side of me, Southern Nevada.
Well, you don't know unless you ask.
Go ahead.
The unfortunate thing about putting those horses on that is until you can somehow control the number of breeding animals out there, it's like a perpetual motion machine. They're not going to go away. There's only going to multiply. I mean, all mammals want to procreate and, spread their genetics around. So those horses are the same thing, and they continue to breed on the outside. So eventually you would saturate whatever level of animals you could put there. But those ranches also have permits, so then you'd have the same complications. I mean, the only solution to it is to if you don't like horse meat, don't go into Chevelina. Don't go to Belgium, don't go to France, don't go to Samoa. Use them. That's the only real solution, but it's not very popular. And Southern Nevada Water Authority, no, they're not operating those ranches very well. They lost $600,000. They figured that they're over 5 years further down the road if they even need that water. The water use in Las Vegas is off 20%. The amount of water they were using for dust control for construction when Las Vegas was booming was more than the pipeline will pack. So there are some serious complications that pipeline is causing, and if for some reason the political winds would change, maybe we'll all get lucky and those lands will be put back in private hands, that people will have the incentive of ownership to make a much better stab at it than is being done now. Thank you.
Okay, more on the wild horse issue. No more on the wild horse issue. Excellent, let's